Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. And I just wanted to kind of put a cap on the series that has been running on this channel for the last couple of weeks, breaking down our rookie class, talking about what our various rookies can bring to the table here in Seattle, and basically just trying to get everybody on the same page on what these guys are, what they can do, and what we should look for from them as we go into the 2023 season. So, ran for a couple weeks. We went over all the draft picks, and then I did four of the most interesting UDFAs over the last couple days. So, I'm going to be uploading the draft class document I put together on my Patreon, and I'm also going to be posting it for Ring of Honor level members on the channel. So if you are a Patreon pledger or you're a Ring of Honor level member on YouTube, you'll be able to see this document. Now, the whole document has been shown over the last couple weeks on my YouTube channel, so I don't think that many people are going to find it super interesting to look at because you already saw the whole thing when I had it on screen in my videos. But for those of you out there who maybe would work better with an actual document that you can manipulate and play with and scroll through at your leisure instead of being dictated by my scrolling on the video, maybe you'll get something out of it. But I'm going to throw this up on the Patreon like I plan on doing with most of the things I write up from now on for this YouTube channel. So I wanted to let everybody know about that. And I also kind of want to now take a step back and look at the draft class as a whole now that I've kind of analyzed each pick one by one, because this draft class was in many ways not what a lot of fans were expecting, and I think not a lot of what some fans wanted. I think that there are a lot of Seahawks fans out there who go into the draft kind of with an open mind on what the team does. They just want the team to add good players. But I do think that there were a decent number of Seahawks fans that went into this draft with a kind of a pretty narrow vision on what the team needed to improve on, and a lot of them felt like those things were not really improved on in this draft. So I want to kind of do the bird's eye view of this draft and talk about what this does. And the main thing that I see, and I kind of touched on this in a video I made shortly after the first couple days of the draft, back in, well, now a month ago, but I want to reiterate it because I believe what happened later in this draft kind of reinforced it. I'm talking about the offense, and I made that video a while ago talking about third down, and I stand by that. I believe that a huge chunk of this draft, we made 5 draft picks on offensive players: JSN, Charbonnet, Bradford, Oluwatimi, and McIntosh. And the way that I see it, at least 3 of those picks are designed to be crucial parts of this offense on third down, which is one of the areas the Seahawks were not very good at last year. They were 20th. And I believe it was the main thing that kept our offense from being elite. We just couldn't stay on the field on third down. And if you go back and watch that video I posted coming up now on a month ago, you'll see what I'm trying to advocate for in that video. But it's not just about third down. It's also about the offense in general. And when I look at those 5 picks, JSN, Charbonnet, Bradford, Oluwatimi, and McIntosh, I do see a lot of value being added on third down. But bigger than that, I'm also seeing an offense that is doing everything that it can to enable the quarterback and the offensive coordinator to succeed. And the reason why I really want to single that out here is because we have made this, what we have done a brilliant job of going into the 2023 season is making this a put up or shut up year for Geno Smith and Shane Waldron. And I spoke about this somewhat in a previous video, but I want you guys to think about this for a second here. You go look at Geno Smith's contract. Yes, it behooves us to let him have 2 years on that deal. It does, because the dead money is significant next year. However, it's not crippling. And you see teams eat dead cap hits like what we would hypothetically eat on a Geno Smith release next year all the time. Happens fairly frequently. In fact, the dead cap hit we would take on a Geno release or trade next year is nothing compared to the dead cap hit that we saw the Eagles take on Carson Wentz, just as an example. So it does happen. So we're going into this season, and we've done this excellent job stocking the top end of our receiver depth chart. We have some of the best receivers in the league. We have a varied and talented running back group. We have a deep tight end room. We have an offensive line that should at least be a little above average this year because it's being built around young players that should improve dramatically. And you put that all together, and you combine that with the fact that it was reinforced in this draft pretty significantly, and a lot of the weaknesses were paved over, there's no excuse. Like, what does this offense not have at this point? Power back? Maybe they don't have a pure bruising power back. Power backs in the modern NFL are not as useful and utilized as they used to be, but okay, maybe you would look at this offense and say, hey, we don't really have a true power back. Charbonnet and to a certain extent McIntosh can run with some power, but they are not necessarily the guy you want to throw out there on 3rd and 1 when you need 2 yards to keep the drive alive. Other than that, they've got zone beaters like JSN. They've got man coverage beaters like DK Metcalf. They've got a possession receiver wizard like Tyler Lockett, who is still one of the most, when you look at the way defenses play him, one of the most feared and respected receivers in the league. You've got a legitimate third down running back in Kenny McIntosh and a viable third down running back in Zach Charbonnet. You've got all these different things working on this offense right now. You even, not that you got pure blue chippers here, but you looked at your 2 questionable spots on that offensive line in Phil Haynes right guard and Evan Brown center, and you drafted depth to give you, at the very least, a parachute to pull on if those guys aren't playing well later in this season. So you have kind of given your offense everything that it could want going into this 2023 season. And you gave Geno Smith a contract that has a reasonable out after 1 season, not just 2 seasons. Yes, the out is clean after 2 seasons, but it's reasonable after 1. So if Geno Smith does not perform this year with everything you've given him, he's not going to have any kind of excuse for that. If he doesn't reproduce the success that he had last year and maybe even build on it, then guess what? You can move on. You can. You are not married to him the way that some of these teams are married to their quarterbacks for several years. There is a year-to-year commitment on Geno Smith. He even commented on this recently, that in his mind it's year-to-year, and he's absolutely right. And if he doesn't produce a lot this year, like a top 5, top 6 offense, I would say, and put up numbers that are better or at least equal to what he did last year, when he gets new things to work with, like Charbonnet, like JSN, like to a certain extent McIntosh, like what will almost certainly be an improved offensive line, then you let him go. You do eat some dead money, but not a crippling amount of dead money. And guess what? There is a really, really promising quarterback class right in front of you. And that goes for Waldron as well. If he doesn't produce really good results, because through 2 years under Waldron, we have 1 year that was just okay, the first year. Last year was good. And now it's time to prove, can this guy become an elite offensive coordinator in this league? And this is also the case for him. Put up or shut up. Produce, or we are willing to move on. We are ready and willing to move on. I think Waldron's contract might be up next year anyway, and you pretty much, it's kind of rare that you have a coach in a contract year. So this upcoming offseason is probably the offseason where we decide, do we want to keep you around? Now, if he has a really good year, he might leave anyway to become a head coach somewhere. But hey, that would be a good problem to have because it would mean he had a good year. But if he just has another year kind of like last year where it's good, maybe really good, but not quite good enough to become a head coach, then he can stick around as the offensive coordinator for another year, and we'll be happy to do it. But there's no excuse for those guys. Like last year, Geno had some bad moments, had some bad games, and some people got on him really badly for it. And I typically didn't. And I did feel like there were some very fair excuses for why some of those games didn't go Gino's way, why he didn't play very well. Our running back room was completely wrecked last year to the point where we had some games where we were down to like one or two running backs, and one of them would be Tony Jones, who was a guy basically scooped up off the street. The inside of the offensive line was pretty weak for most of the year. There were quite a few plays that just got wrecked because our center and right guard were kind of incapable. We had no receiver depth, and when Marquise Goodwin got hurt, there was just not really anything going on that was good behind Lockett and Metcalf. It was There were some things going on in that offense that Gino really had to kind of drag us to that top 10 ranking, kicking and screaming. This year, that should not be the case. So I won't be giving Gino the same pass that I did at times last year. Not that I did all the time, but we now have the ability to use this season as a really clean evaluation of what Gino is. And we have set ourselves up so if he doesn't do well enough, we can move on, trade him or cut him or whatever, and turn our focus to the draft class, which again is going to have some really good quarterbacks in it. Should be better than this year's quarterback class, which, by the way, was pretty good as far as QB classes go. So that's what this draft class really says to me. Yes, we didn't address our precise needs on the defensive line. We didn't necessarily address the things that were really bad last year. But what we have done is set up a pretty good opportunity to make a decision on Geno Smith and Shane Waldron this season, and I think that's worth a lot. Now, real quickly, I also want to talk about the 5 defensive players that we picked, because even on this level, this was not what a lot of Seahawks fans were expecting and, for the most part, wanted. I think people have come around at this point a little bit, at least somewhat. But we drafted 5 defensive players: Witherspoon, Derek Hall, Cameron Young, Mike Morris, and Jarek Reed. And you've got an outside cornerback, you've got an edge rusher, you've got a safety, and then you've got the 2 linemen in round 4 and round 5. So a lot of people went into this draft class thinking about the run defense, and hey, I was too. And we kind of came out of this draft not doing a lot in that area. Now, Devon Witherspoon is a very good tackler, and I do think he will help this run defense with his presence out there, even though he plays cornerback. Like, every position can help. By the way, it's Devin Witherspoon. I know I sometimes say Devon because that's how it's spelled, but Devin Witherspoon. Derek Hall, I think, will be a good run defender in the NFL as well. Maybe not immediately, but I think he will be. And I do believe that these picks have made us better in that area, but let's think about it like this, guys. Here's what I'm going to say about the defense. Yeah, the run defense was the worst thing last year on this team, for sure. But the defense as a whole was bad. Like, don't forget that this defense as a whole was really bad last year, too. We were 25th in points allowed. There were many games where the passing defense wasn't really any better. Our pressure rate was below average. And in the playoffs, we got completely clowned by Brock Purdy. So, yeah, the run defense needed help, but don't act like the pass defense didn't need help either. And in the modern NFL, that's just always going to be more important than run defense. Like, in this draft, the Dallas Cowboys drafted Mazi Smith at 26, and I kind of had an internal battle with myself trying to think about how I felt about that pick, because Mazi Smith is a pure run stopper. That's his only value will come against the run. He is useless against the pass, basically. And in the modern NFL, you would typically think, well, you don't want to spend a first-round pick on any player that can't affect the pass. And Mazi Smith is basically a tackling dummy against the pass. But maybe for a team like the Cowboys that has a really good defense that just isn't very good against the run, he's worth a first-round pick, because they have everything else good. They just need that big guy in the middle to help fix the run defense. That's not the case here in Seattle. This defense is just bad overall, and help anywhere is going to help on some level. So, something to think about. Keep in mind that the defensive problems go way beyond just run defense. All right, That's my breakdown. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think. But that is my rundown on this rookie class complete.